Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Metaphysical Egypt. We have a special guest today. Stephen Mehler is an independent Egyptologist and an author of many books and a student of Abd'el Hakim Awyan, just like Patricia Lehman. We're very happy to welcome you today. Hi, Stephen.
Hi, Alan. Good to see you again.
Great to see you. Hi, Patricia.
Hey, Alan. Hey, Stephen.
Hey,
Great.
Patricia.
Just as a little aside, Stephen, you're the reason I know Patricia in the first place. I came on your tour to Egypt.
I remember.
2016.
2016.
2016. Yeah, that's a long time ago now. It seems like yesterday, but next year when I do this tour, we're going to talk about with Patricia. It's going to be the 20-year anniversary when she first came to Egypt with me in 2005.
Can you believe it?
Yeah, I know. And then she came back in 2007 to be part of Hakim's last full tour. So
it was my idea to do the reunion tour, remember?
That was all our ideas. I talked him into it because he was basically retired, and if you know, he had a lot of physical problems on that tour, walking, his knees swollen and everything. But so everybody should know that Patricia had the experience of doing a full tour with Hakim and I.
Yeah. It was incredible. The reunion tour is, I think, what she called it.
Exactly, and we had a lot of people. We had people come back who had been before, and I'm working very hard now to try to get people to come back with us next year who have been, like Satyen Raja, like Linda Boone, who I've sent a message to come back, who knew Hakim, and we can share Hakim's stories like we're going to do today.
Yeah, exactly.
And I also want to open up by saying that I basically thought I retired in 2018, the last tour that Patricia and I did together, and we won't go into detail why, but I thought I was finished. But during COVID, I was interviewed by a woman in LA who did a series of great interviews, brought me back out, and since then, I asked Patricia. She had said to me last year in 2023 when we came, if I would still be willing to do another tour with her, and I said yes. And so the point here is that when we went last year, my wife Teresa and I, we spent 9 days. I set up the itinerary. Patricia set it all up for us. She told the guides who I was. She told the tour group, the tour company, Select Travel, to take good care of me, and we were treated like royalty. And all the guides that we had a man named Adam, who's actually Nubian, who was from the Matuki tribe, which Hakim loved, and two brothers, Amir and his brother Tarek in Luxor and Aswan, and the great Fido, who we'll have with us next year, is a wonderful man from a wonderful family. And they all wanted to know about Hakim and the teaching. So here I was coming back, in a way thinking my reputation was in tatters. No one knows about Hakim anymore. I don't know how we're going to be treated, but I knew I would catch up with the keepers that knew me, and there's still some of them around and knew me from Hakim. But they all wanted to know about Hakim and stories. And so that's why I'm so glad to share stories today with you guys. Everybody wanted to know about him, and it felt so good. And as Teresa said to Patricia before we left, when we got together in Old Cairo, it was a healing for me, a great healing. And I'm back out again, doing interviews with Jocelyn Mercado, with other people, and very happy to be able to talk about Hakim, because there are people who want to know who he was, what were the teachings. And as you guys have been doing, I haven't caught all your podcasts, but the ones I've gotten to hear are just rich, full of tremendous information. Patricia has taken the teachings to a far deeper level, which is what Hakim wanted. He didn't want us just to be robots and say, well, Hakim said, well, I do that, unfortunately, because I was so into him and he's my master. But it's not, Hakim says this, Hakim said that. He wanted us to put our own flavor on the teachings. And Patricia has done that better than anyone. Put her own research that she's done in these last 10 years or so, and putting her own interpretation on things. And it's one of the things I wanted to discuss with you guys is to start out with one of my favorite Hakim-isms, one of his statements. He would say, being an oral wisdom keeper, an oral tradition, he never wanted to write books. He never wanted to write articles. He blessed my two books, which are just introductions to his teachings. There's so much more to it. But he had expression, if it had to be written down, it's not the whole truth. So that deals with the Torah, the New Testament, the Quran, and all the books, even mine. All books are snapshots in time. What may be true then when it's written may not be true today. Like we could look at books written by scientists in the 19th century, and they were way off compared to what we've learned in the 20th and now 21st century. So I want to say this before we start to talk, because Patricia does an incredible job, and she's taught Jocelyn Mercado, who we're going to be working with, Jocelyn Starfeather, on our tour. Patricia can look at what's written on the walls and understand that I'm going to say to you, all that's in the dynastic temples, all that's written on the walls is patriarchal mythology. But within that, just like we say, we don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. I tell people to read the Torah, read the New Testament, read the Quran, because then you got to get past it. Because what Patricia does is she sees the ancient wisdom that's still incorporated in the dynastic teachings. You have to dig to find it, and she has the great ability to do that. So what she's taught Jocelyn to do is to be able to look at the inscriptions on the walls and see where the ancient wisdom is embedded. But it is embedded. So it's to understand for people, because we're going to talk about pharaohs and gods and goddesses today. And the idea is that what was dynastic times is patriarchal mythology, glorifying the king, saying this and that. Hanuti, which I know you guys, if you haven't done yet, you were supposed to do a whole podcast on the Hanuti. We can start to talk about that today, because it is a distortion. These are the beings, these are the people who took the ancient teachings and manipulated and controlled them to create the idea of religion. That's my second book. So I just wanted to start by saying that people who've listened to your podcast can understand that Patricia can go on the walls and see the true ancient wisdom that's there and puts her own take on it, puts her own interpretation on it. And nothing is right or wrong. It's just different. I put my flavor on it. Hakeim chose me to be the one I was, because he knew I already had a background in archaeology and prehistory and geology, and that's the things he loved. And so he chose me to be the one to take it to the deeper level. But then Patricia came along, and she too. And so what I say about my two books, From Light into Darkness and The Land of Osiris, they are just introductions, just primers to what these profound teachings were. And I now have become, like he was, an oral wisdom teacher. I'm not writing any more books, and we can talk about why people always ask me, why was there not a third book, which we started? We can talk about that. But I don't write anymore. I don't want to be in part of on-site conferences, like the great conference Patricia's doing next April. I'm interested just to do it like this. I'll take part in conferences to do online teachings, to teach it on as an oral wisdom keeper. And that's why we can now take the teachings to a much deeper level, because the truth be told, he still communicates with me. As Patricia had said too in your talks with you, he planted seeds in us. Sometimes he would say things and I would go like, what does that mean? I don't understand it. And I wake up years later. I wake up now in the middle of the night, and Hakeim is talking to me. The Sphinx used to do that to me, but now it's Hakeim. And now I say, oh, that's what he meant. Years later, 15, 20, 25 years later, I'm remembering things he told me that now make sense. So that's the beauty of his teachings, was that he would always go to the level of the person he was talking to. He'd know how far he could go with each person. And with Patricia and I, he went the deepest.
Patricia, you've told me the exact same thing that Stephen just said.
And he said the exact same thing to me, which is amazing. And I love what you said, Stephen, just exactly what you just said, because when I'm in the temples, and I still have aha moments every time I go into these temples.
Me too. That was
and I see something and I go, that's what Hakeim was talking about.
Absolutely.
And it just keeps coming forward. And he spent how many years in those temples?
Yes.
And I think that's where this comes from. Or now I get when he said this. And it's so beautiful to experience all of that. So it's incredible.
That's the beauty of a true master, a great teacher who will do that.
That's what this work really is. That's what Patricia and I are doing. We're trying to plant seeds that are not necessarily going to bear fruit now, but these are ideas that will take root in people's imaginations, and it'll resonate with the people it needs to.
Right.
And the truth always comes out.
Yeah, always. That's why he says they can bury it, they can keep it hidden. You can't keep it hidden forever, and it will all come out. I mean, this is why every day I scour websites for the latest findings in archaeology, to see what's going on. And in Egypt, a lot of things are happening that are not publicized, but I have contacts who tell me what's going on. And I think other things I wanted to discuss with you guys that we could get into has been a series of shows on PBS, on Nova, about the history of our planet, geologically and biologically. So one of the podcasts that I listened to, you guys were talking about possible Earth changes. Patricia, you would talk about, I think his name was Ben Davidson, things that are going to happen in 2030. And that's nothing to what's happened in the past. Because one of the things Hakim wanted us to do was to see the big picture, to go beyond our little ego selves and understand the totality of cycles within cycles. He didn't believe in a beginning. I don't believe in a beginning. There was no Big Bang. What the Webb telescope is now showing, it can look 9 billion years into the past. It's the most amazing thing that when we look at the images of this telescope, because of the distances these galaxies are, we can only see them as redshift, the only thing that happens. And they're billions of years old. And they're now looking 9, 10 billion years into the past. And what are they seeing? Gigantic galaxies, great structures. So where is the Big Bang? Where is the evidence of dust clouds and that formed and then explode?
Expansion and retraction. It's
exactly.
A breath.
It's a never-ending.
Out and a breath back in again of every little galaxy, universes, cycles within cycles, and universes within universes and galaxies. And it's this breath. Even our solar system breathes, and our galaxy breathes, and it creates the cycles of our perception.
Exactly. There is no beginning and there is no end. It's always been.
Every end is a new beginning.
Exactly. Yeah. And exactly, when I was talking with Jocelyn on a podcast about black holes, and when they originally, and Einstein was the one who proposed black holes, but they couldn't see them. Now with these telescopes, we can see them. And so it's first, so it's the death, it's the end. A star, like to say to people, if you want a big picture, in a couple of billion years from now, our star is going to become a red giant. That means that Mercury, Venus, the Earth, Mars will be gone. And then it's to become a white dwarf. And then it's going to go supernova. And then it's to become a black hole. So everybody thinks, a black hole is an event horizon. Everything that comes next to a black hole gets sucked in, gets dissolved into its basic atoms, and that's the end of it. No, what they know now is it comes out the other side as dust clouds, forms new galaxies, new stars, new solar systems. And so Jocelyn just came she just said to me, it's a womb. And I said, you're right, exactly.
Primordial waters, plasma. It is that.
Exactly.
And it is a breath. And exactly what not only ancient Egypt said, but ancient cultures all over the world.
All they knew, because as we talk about cycles, and she wants to know about the building tests. We can talk about that. I'm going to talk about that a great deal. What's at Edfu on the walls? Because it's a great expression there. It's not talking about a beginning. Zep Tepi was not a beginning. It's also written Tep Zepi. They write it 2 different ways. It's translated many different ways. The first time, the primal occasion, first occasion. What it's talking about is a previous age of Aten, when we were technically fully enlightened, and when the pyramids were built, when the Sphinx was created, when there was a high previous civilization. So there was no beginning. But right next to that is an expression that Hakim loved, which I always use for him. It said people then could walk with the netters.
Exactly.
That means to be enlightened, to be open-minded, to have total and understand what the energies are. And that's
we were the gods that walked the earth at that time.
Exactly.
And we evolved.
Exactly.
It's always us in all our different forms.
Exactly.
And the demigods, they say followers of Horus. Some people say Seshu Hor as we were all Sesh. We were all Sesh.
Exactly.
We had that capability. And now we fell into where we're at now with separation consciousness.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because the Shemsu Hor, or the Seshu Hor, the followers of Horus, the Falcon tribe that comes in and brings patriarchal mythology. So when you first postulated the statue could go, you said Horus rising. And I first said, no, why would you do that? Why don't you make it Isis rising or Hathor rising and be into the feminine understanding? But more I came to understand it, Horus, of course, in the Greek, Heru becomes hero. It's the hero's journey. And that's what you're teaching. And it makes perfect sense to call your website Horus Rising, because you're teaching people to go on the journey to self. And that's what it meant to walk with the netters. That's exactly what it meant. And I used to use that expression for Hakim. In fact, in 1992, when I first came to Egypt, we were being interviewed by a woman named Lynn Chester. She was a professional actress, and she had, in those days, 1992, a closed circuit TV show where she talked about healing. And so she interviewed me, she interviewed Hakeim, she interviewed John Anthony West, she interviewed the three of us together. And I have a copy of this video. And so she would ask Hakeim, she said, you know, a lot of people who come, they feel really connected to the netters, to the gods and goddesses, she would say. And do you feel that the netter talked to you, Hakeim? And she said, of course they talked to me. He walked with the netters. That's what he was teaching us to do.
Yes, 100%. Totally agree. So I prepared a great presentation. It's just photographs that we can muse over as we talk about all the things we want to talk about.
Right.
So I'm going to go ahead and put that up.
There we go. Okay. Those are the, okay. I would rather if you could get to the pictures of his grandfather.
I will get there. No worries.
Okay.
I have a lot. They're just, I think people will enjoy seeing some of these old pictures.
Okay.
I had so much fun going through.
That's in 2006. I came to Egypt and I gave him copies of both my books. That's me giving him the copy of From Light into Darkness. He blessed my two books. Again, he was always skeptical of the written word. There was very few books he ever supported. And of course, he supported mine because he worked with me on it. But again, it's only a snapshot. But From Light into Darkness tells how religion came to be. It's the story of the Hanuti.
Oh, definitely. And I should have put up the picture of the other book, Land of Osiris. These two books, I do want to encourage the public to go out and get copies of these. It does share just, Stephen did put so much work into it. And it's from all those years that he spent with Hakeim, and, it's just beautiful and not missed.
Patricia, do you want to say something about the idea that we've talked about before, that the time for books is over?
Yes. Well, when I was spent, that almost 2 weeks in the village with Hakeim, we would get up every morning and meet out in front of the house. He'd have his coffee, smoke his shisha.
Of course.
And we would sit and talk. And I always laugh because sometimes we would sit there and we'd stop and we kept talking intuitively and then pick up exactly where we left off. It was, just an odd thing for me at that time. It's not an odd thing. We do that. But he was so interesting in that way. But he did tell me that the time for books was over. He was actually talking about your book, Stephen. And he said, Stephen thinks we need to write another book. And he said, I think the time for books is over. And I said something about, well, the information is out there in the ethers and we're waking up and beginning to, we're absorbing it. It's out there. And information changes so rapidly. Like
exactly.
It's we can change our past, present, and future just in how we perceive it. And, it's just interesting. And I find the same problem. I tried to write a book during the pandemic. I never have time. And I thought it was a great opportunity, and I wrote more than 600 pages.
Wow!
So excited, and yet I couldn't. I had it all down, all this information, and I couldn't weave it together because it's nonlinear information.
Absolutely. Now that leads to why there was not a third book. You beautifully set it up, because in 2005, after I had finished From Light into Darkness, we discussed the possibility of a third book, and it was going to be, to put it bluntly, a hieroglyphic dictionary according to Abd'el Hakim. And he would say to me, well, nobody knows 360. Nobody knows all of them. But he said, I could probably do 20 or 22. I said, Papa, that's enough for a book. Let's go. So we started. He came to the United States in 2006, and I could tell that full story. We brought him to Colorado. We sat outside every morning, every night, and started on it. Started on the third book. He did 5, and then he stopped. I got 2 more out of him. 7. But he said, no, Stephen, what we're doing is exactly what the Greeks did. We're putting labels on them. And he said this expression, which is for you to know, Patricia and everybody, they will label themselves. And that's exactly what you're talking about. So no, he stopped the third book with me. He didn't want to go any further. That was it. And that's why people ask me, why have I not written another book? No, it's oral teachings now. It's for everybody to come to the conclusions themselves. That's why when we go on tour, we're going to ask everybody what impressions they get. What did you get from this, from Isis, from Sekhmet, from Horus, from Osiris? And we're going to share that way, because people's expressions and feelings and impressions are just as important as anybody else. So they will label themselves.
Yes. And what's interesting is there's even a greater depth of teaching within what you just said, because the labels themselves are the containers that prevent us from seeing a wider scope.
That's why he hated labels. That's why he hated labels. He hated labels.
There are at least 7 different levels of understanding every glyph, every myth, every icon, every statue.
7 layers of understanding. That's a beautiful. And what this picture is showing us sitting by the Sphinx in 2007, the last full tour. In the background is Julia Jordan, great friend of mine. And here we are. I think you took this picture, in fact. And this was on the last full tour in 2007.
There we go. Yeah, I probably did.
No, there's a bunch of pictures you took. Oh, there we are together at Saqqara. Yep. And on the left, on the right is one of my very famous pictures, because just keep an eye on the expression he's doing with his hand, with his arm, because that'll come back to his grandfather's picture when we get there. But I always tell people, and look who's sitting behind him in the background, taking it all in. Patricia.
Yeah, I was always in the background, just absorbing everything that was being said.
This was in front of the great statue of Ramses II at Memphis.
Yep, that's right. I remember the day like it was yesterday. And we had a really bad windstorm when we were at Saqqara, if you remember.
Yes, many times. At Dashur, too.
Yep, that's right.
Let me take a look. That looks like it's at Karnak, the one on the left, possibly at Karnak. Yeah, and of course.
That's definitely a Karnak. We're at the alabaster, that big alabaster. Whatever you.
Alabaster or travertine?
It's travertine, because of the great Susan Moore. The great Susan Moore has taught us the difference between travertine and alabaster. Alabaster was for vases, for cups, was for decoration. It didn't contain all the mica, which travertine contains for sound transmission. And there we are on the right in the Great Pyramid, in the King's Chamber, with the great cyanide box, which is not rose quartz, not pink quartz. Those are not scientific terms. The scientific term is cyanide granite, full of mica, full of crystal for resonance. That was a sound box. It was not a sarcophagus. There never was any mummy of Khufu put in there. It was for transmission of sound. Yeah,
and incredibly resonant. Every chamber inside these structures are so resonant.
Yes.
And perfectly tuned.
Yes, exactly, like an instrument.
And amazing about the different healings that I've witnessed and even experienced during some of these resonance sessions.
Me too.
And at the Saqqara, in the sound healing
hospital.
Yeah, it's hard. It is the Hebset chord. That's what they call it, but it is what Hakim called the sound.
And that's important, because when Hakim got to know me and know my background and my interests, he wanted me to concentrate on 2 things in the work that I did with him: sound and water. Sound and water. The knowledge that the ancients had and the interplay of both. Because, of course, sound travels faster in water. Some of the research that's been done shows that whales and dolphins can communicate with themselves underwater for hundreds of miles by just sending out a sound vibration. So sound and water, that's what the pyramid's about.
Running water, This is what you used to say on the tours.
Yep.
Sound, light, and running water, which is all the elements that were used to enliven the sites.
And to create free energy, which Nikola Tesla did not discover. 150 years ago, Nikola Tesla was saying, we don't need to burn fossil fuels. We don't need to take oil out of the ground and destroy the environment. We can work with the universal energy that's part of the earth itself and the universe, free energy. And that's how the Khemitians do. And they used sound and water to create free energy.
They could feel the currents. They had the capability with their right brain consciousness. They could feel the currents. They knew how to harness them.
That's why they didn't need to write it down.
Exactly.
That's the last time. That's 2003. The last time I believe Hakim went into the Great Pyramid and led an initiation, led the energy in the King's Chamber. After that, he couldn't go in anymore. I can't go in anymore. Next year, I'm going to tell people what to do when they go in the Great Pyramid. They can't go down into the crypts at Dendara anymore. All of that. I've gotten too old, just like he was, but I can tell people what to do and what to experience.
And that's the most important part.
Yep.
But yeah, no, I love this picture.
Yep. That's
and this
1998 at Saqqara. He took us, and we can try to do that again next year. There is the evidence there of an ancient Purba, a very ancient Khemitian temple, which is only in ruins, but you can see the steps that lead up to it. There's a mound that he used to like to take people where we are in this picture to meditate, and he's just digging the ground, and you'd find pieces of alabaster, of cyanide and alabaster that were part of what was then the Holy of Holies. But this is the Holy of Holies of an ancient Khemitian temple over 10,000 years ago. And that's where he used to like to do meditations.
In fact, remember on that tour, I think it was the first one I was on with you, and you pointed to where it was, and I said, let's go. And you said, I don't think we can go through the fence. And we did.
Right.
Remember? And we did go. I've been out several times since. There's seats there, too.
Great. We can go there because for a while.
I don't know that we can go now, but we could then.
Okay. Well, I know for a fact, and without mentioning his name, but the person that used to know this and used to know what Hakim was doing, and he put up fences and walls to try to block us from finding these things. And when we get to the fillet, that's one of the most important ones that was blocked. But if we can go, we go. If we can't, we can't. It is how it is. It is what it is.
Every group opens doors. Every group seems to carry keys to opening doors along the way, and it's always interesting to see what doors are opened.
Correct.
To us as we go.
I always tell people the itinerary we put out is just an outline. Maybe we can do this, maybe we can. Sometimes if we substitute for it, it turns out being better than what was planned. And so it always is what it's going to be at the moment, what we're going to experience. But as you said, it's the same with me. When I go back with you next year, it'll be my 24th trip to Egypt. That always finds something new, always gets some new blast of energy. Always.
Yeah, it's so true.
I just love keepers. This picture. Yeah, it's one of the keepers, and I don't.
This is in the Serapeum.
Okay, they all know me there now too. Boy, you should see how they rushed. They rushed to me when I came in because they knew they were going to get a good tip. One of the things that I'm known for, as Yusuf is known for too, is being good tippers. So that when they see you come, come, I'll show you, take you anywhere. But it didn't happen at the Osirian, and you warned me about it, and you were right. I said to Teresa, I'll get in because I know the keeper, don't worry. But when we got to go into the Osirian, and they said, no, you can't go, no, you can't go. And then I saw the keeper come forward, and he saw me, and he nodded to me, and he shook his head, no. So I said to our guard, Amma, if he says la'ah, which is no in Arabic, then it is la'ah. Because if he says no, it's no. It's a thing now where it's controlled by Cairo. You have to have a group. You have to pay thousands of pounds to get into the back of the Syrian. But we're going to do that next year because that's going to be arranged. But yeah, you can't go in as an individual. And even Yvonne, who runs the House of Life now at Abydos, told me, no, you're not going to be able to get in. I said, ego thing. I'll get in because I know the keeper. But when he said no, it was no, because he used to always get me in. When we would go with groups with Brian and other people, he would tell me and Brian come with him, and he would take us down the steps into the Osirian, and we could see the glyphs, the flower of life in there, but not the back rooms. I've never been in the back rooms, and I'm envious.
The back rooms are wonderful. It depends. Sometimes when it's really moist, there's mold back in some of the rooms, and I don't go in anymore. But yeah, no, it was great. The old days, we used to get in everywhere. I've been in almost all the pyramids because, especially when tourists weren't coming and we were through the revolution, or what they call the uprising now.
Right.
There was no one here, so they would just throw us the keys, and we were in, some of the Abusir pyramids.
Yeah, that's great. And
great.
Because they knew who Yusuf was and who you were, and of course.
And we used to get in the Osirian all the time. I used to go down by myself. But today, it's because it's being watched. And, and really, they don't want it to happen anymore.
And that's why when he said no, I knew that meant that he had to talk to a higher level and that he could get in trouble. And if
Yeah.
he said, it's like I said, if he says la, it's la. That's it.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
It's not that there still aren't great things that we can do. It's just that you have to sometimes plan ahead. And yeah, it requires a private permission. And
But,
Stephen's right. In October, we're going to have that permission. So
great, that's wonderful. And also, here we go. And also, in that temple, we're going to stop using the term the Temple of Seti I, because it is not. It was an original temple of Osiris. There's a back wall there. I showed it to our guide Amr, and he was blown away, because there's a section as you come in. We'll do it again when we go. That it was built 4000 BCE, long time before the 19th dynasty. So Seti, Ramses, they always appropriated things. They put their priests, they put their cartouches on there, but that is not a temple of Seti. It is the temple of Osiris, and we'll straighten that out when we get there. Now, the two beautiful photographs here. Okay, the one on the right I got first. The one on the left I actually got from Madaba. Tried to get information from the family is like trying to pull teeth. I've been trying for years to get this history, the background. I still
don't
never
have it, Stephen, but they do have piles of photographs and paperwork, but it's things in Egypt aren't filed digitally.
No. Hakim never had a bank account. He kept his money in a pillow that he slept on at night. That was his bank account. That was his safety deposit box. They never dealt with banks. But the idea is, I've never seen a picture of Hakim's mother. That's what I've been looking for years. People said they were going to find. No one could come up with it. But she sent the picture on the left, which is his grandfather, Mahmoud Awyan. That's when he was younger. The picture on the right was sent to me by a wonderful man who we worked with as our guide in 2018, who's soon to be Dr. Muhammad Fahmy. He's finally completing his doctorate. Now, the story about it is great, and I have to explain it. He sent this picture to me, and he said, "Who do you think that is?" And I first looked at it. I said, "Well, that's Hakim." He said, "No, it's not." And I looked and said, "No, it isn't. It's not dressed like him." No. But if you blow the picture up, you'll see that when Hakim got older, he was a dead ringer for his grandfather. So the book he found it in was a book from one of his teachers, which was in tatters. It was so old. It was all in French, published in the 1930s. This photograph on the right is dated at 1910, 16 years before Hakim was born. Hakim never talked to me about his grandfather. He talked to me about his uncle, Zehi, who was Mahmoud's son, who was his mother's brother, who adopted Hakim as a young child and became his father image. In fact, as we know, once Hakim came of age, he dropped his father's last name. On his passport would read Abd'el Hakim Awyan Hassan, which was his father's name. But he never spoke to me about his father. His father was a merchant, was not involved in the teachings at all. In fact, the only thing he said about his father was when Hakim suddenly, at the age of 8, he went into a tomb on the Giza Plateau. He looked up and he said, "I have to know what's written on the walls." 8 years old. I have to know what's written on the walls. And he came back, and as he became older, he told his mother and father he wanted to become an archaeologist. He wanted to become an Egyptologist. And his father said to him, the only thing he ever said to me about his father said to him, "What are you going to do with archaeology? How are you going to make money?" My father said the same thing to me.
My mom said the same thing to me.
But he said, his expression was, and Allan, this is how beautiful he was. He used the English language better than us native speakers. It was not his first language, obviously. That's Arabic. But he could say things in English that was so profound. He said to his father, "I can't help it. I am captured by this area." He's seduced by, he had to know. And as we know, and as we can say, he knew what the glyphs meant better than anybody that's on the planet before or now. He could understand the glyphs. He had to know the language. And so the picture on the right is dated in 1910. It says in French, M. Awyan, and it spells it as we spell it, Awyan. So many of his relatives now spell it Owyan. They do it phonetically, Awyan, Ow, O-W. No, it was spelled just as Hakim spelled it by his grandfather, Awyan. It said M. Awyan, le Douane de le Guide Turkman. Profound expression. Now, as you know, in a lot of languages, certain words cannot be properly translated into English. We have really no English equivalent. The first one to do that in French was R.A. Schwab de Lubitsch, who John Anthony West was a great student of, developed what he called symbolist archaeology. He was the first one to question the age of Kemet, of ancient Egypt, as being over 10,000 years. The first one in the 30s. So he used a word to describe the netters. He's used the French word puissance. Now, it translated to English as power. That's not what it meant. So much more than power. The essence of the netter, the power, is more than power. So the word duen doesn't also get translated properly in English. It means teacher, master, the head. No, it means the absolute leader, master of his field. The Legi Turkman, which are the same expression as Dragoman. The Turkman were, at the time of his grandfather, which was the 19th century, it was under the Ottoman Empire. The Ottoman Turks were the last caliphate of Islam. They controlled Egypt. They controlled who did the sites. So they would choose certain individuals who were like the guides of today. They were trained not only in Arabic, they could speak many different European languages for the Europeans that were coming, could probably speak, I bet he could even speak English. And they were archaeologists, they were new language, culture, and they were the ones who would lead people around on the tours. Again, this is before there was a Department of Antiquities, before there were licensed guides or anything like that. So he was the head. So there's the tradition that came down to Hakim, and I personally believe that he passed away before Hakim was born. If you look, and I've blown up this picture on the right to the highest degree of blowing up, you can see that he's an old man in that picture, maybe 70s, maybe 60s, 70s, and it's 16 years before Hakim was born. He probably passed away before Hakim was born, and Hakim did not know him. He got it from his son, Zeki, who was Hakim's beloved uncle, who he'd always talked to me about Zeki. And I have pictures of Zeki I could have sent too. But so when I showed this to Yusuf, and I said, "What do you think that is?" And he said, "Well, I've seen that picture before. That's my father." I said, "No, it's not. Look at the picture." And he looked at it, and he said, "Yeah, the style of Galabeya he's wearing shows he was a very high, influential man. That's the most elegant Galabeya, and even on the left, that somebody could wear in those days." So I said, "No, that's his Jeddah. That's Papa's grandfather." And that's what he told his boys. And so that's why these pictures are priceless. Here's where it comes down. His grandfather was the man. He was the head of all the guides in the beginning of the 20th century. That photograph is 1910. It is priceless.
Wow.
There he is as a young man on the left.
What a good-looking man he was.
He says, what a handsome dude he was. He was so handsome. And in the right is probably in the 60s, because he's not wearing he doesn't have his mustache then. But I think, did I send you the other picture with him with the group on horseback? I don't know if I did. I thought I did. Anyway, there's another picture of him when he first started out as a guide, wearing a suit and tie, wearing Western dress.
No, I don't have that one.
I'll send it to you. I sent it to Jocelyn. I'm confusing who I sent to who. But anyway, that's when he first started eating tours. So the story then is, he went in the military in the 40s after World War II, so he was not part of the war. He graduated, he got out of the military maybe like 1948. His uncle Zeki, who was a very important person, was in Egyptian parliament in the 30s and 40s, got him into what was then Fuad University. It is today Cairo University. And he graduated in 1952 with dual degrees in archaeology and Egyptology. And that's when he started leading tours. And he did it in Western dress. By the time this picture on the right is taken, in the 60s, he was only wearing Galabeyas. He was only wearing native dress. He stopped wearing any kind of Western clothes after that. So that's the picture. He definitely looks like it's from the 60s because he's young there.
Yeah, he is much younger.
Mm-hmm. And on the right is the picture I took of him in 2006.
Yep. And I found this. This is from a, I think it's an obituary. And I just picked up, I made it bigger, and I'm not sure where I got the clipping, but and they didn't have the other half, but I thought it was a little interesting. They say he was a dragoman.
Right.
That old-fashioned word which describes a tour guide with a distinctive skill and charm.
Absolutely. The Turkman, the dragoman, was second into the prime minister. He was second to the pasha or the emperor, and so he would be the one that would show people around, knew different languages, knew different cultures.
Yeah,
And,
that's what they
and
say.
I tell people Hakim knew at least 7 different languages. He could speak fluent French, fluent Italian, fluent Spanish, fluent German. He even knew the different dialects of German, because there's Hochdeutsch, there's the different, in different parts of Germany, different variety of Germans. He knew it. He knew Dutch because he went to Holland to do graduate work in the 60s, and of course English and ancient Khemitian. He knew better than anyone. So at least 7 languages he could speak.
What I loved about him is he was an expert etymologist, and you could throw any word at him, probably in any one of those languages, and he could tell you where its place of origin was.
And mostly it was Khemitian.
and it's funny because Alan and I talk about that all the time. But he would take a word, and this is what I loved about him. He would take a word and he would just look at you funny, and he would say, you know, in Italy it means this, and you cross the border into whatever France or wherever, and he would say suddenly it's the opposite meaning, and then he would just smile, twinkle, you know, a twinkle in his eyes, and leave you to figure out what he's really saying.
One of the classic examples is our word desert. The Khemitian word was desert, which meant the red land. So directly, the English word desert comes directly from Khemitian. And he would tell me words in Hebrew and Arabic that came from Aramaic. Aramaic was the mother tongue of Hebrew and Arabic, which comes directly from Khemitian. He would point to all the origins. Yeah, linguist, entomologist is correct. He was a master.
He would say everything came out of Egypt, and with the twinkle in his eyes.
that was it's my prejudice too. It all comes from Kemet. It all comes from Kemet. In fact, the word itself, Egyptos, Egypt, is a Greek word. He would say Kemet. Well, it's actually Khemt, and that's why I spell it with a KH. I spelled it differently than other people spell it, and other people now appropriated the word that I created. We created, he had the teaching, I put the label on it, chematology. He loved it, but it spelled it Khemit because it's a Khemt. And actually he would show how the word came down from the Black Land, from how it came, and how everything came from that teaching, from understanding that the original languages that were spoken were all derived from Kemet. That was his prejudice. Even Sanskrit, even the ancient languages that we can talk about today, he claimed Kemet was the mother tongue, Khemitian was the mother tongue of all, and he called it the Suf language, where the word Sufi comes from. And there it is again, one of the ancient Arabic terms for Egypt before it's El Misr, which it is today, was Al-Khem, where the word alchemy comes from. I used to tell people, no, alchemy was not the Middle Ages where the magicians were trying to change lead into gold. That's the exoteric. Carl Jung, the great philosopher, psychologist, was the one who realized that alchemy was actually a teaching of psychology to make us, the lead that we are, in the darkness, hidden, to come to gold, to become enlightened.
Exactly, 100%.
So I used to say to people, alchemy was just the arts and sciences of ancient Kemet. That's it.
I'll take it even a little further, and I've come to believe that the word Kemet actually speaks to a physical perception of being born into this physical world. It's basically illusion, and it's the alchemy of that illusion of form that it speaks to. And so everything was Kemet. Everything is Kemet.
And so the whole teaching is to refine ourselves. It is the psychological journey to come because we're born in this age of Amen, in this age of separation, darkness, everything being hidden. We're born with a veil. When we're born, we forget who we are. We don't remember where we were before on the other side. And then we have to learn. We have to understand fully who we are as human beings, as primates, as mammals, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, as multicellular beings. And the history. That's why I love these, and I could talk to you about the earth changes. I wanted to do that before we finish. I mean, the history, the geology of our planet, we now are considered in geology to still be at the end of an ice age, the last ice age still. And actually they're now, and Susan Moore would totally agree with this, they now have given a new term for where we are now, calling it the Anthropocene. And they say it really started in the 1950s, the age of man, how man is influencing it. But we're still at the end of this ice age. And this ice age was minor compared to ice ages in the past. People can Google this term, Huronian extinction. This is one of the first. We've had 5 major extinctions in this planet. We're in the 6th extinction now. Every day, species around our planet, particularly insects, are going extinct. Yeah. And when a species goes extinct, it doesn't come back. Other species come in to fill that niche, but it doesn't come back. So the Huronian extinction happened 2.5 billion years ago. Here we deal with dates and numbers that people cannot grasp, that our Earth is 4 billion years old. And the first couple of billion years of our planet, there was no life. There was no life. There was just this incredible geological events. Like at one time, the surface temperature of the planet was 200 to 300 degrees Fahrenheit. Of course, nothing could exist. So this Huronian extinction happened 2.5 billion years ago. And it was because of a massive release of oxygen. Oxygen, well, people say that's what we breathe. Wasn't that good? No. When there's too much oxygen in the air, not enough carbon dioxide, the Earth cools and goes into an ice age. When there's too much carbon dioxide and not enough oxygen, which is happening now, we have heat. We have tremendous Earth changes, climate changes, etc. But at this time, 200.5 billion years ago, the Earth was a giant snowball. There was ice covering the whole planet. So the only life forms that existed at that time were in the primordial oceans. Underneath the ice were only microscopic unicellular creatures. There was no complex life. So we know about the 65 million years ago, the dinosaurs, which even that was a minor extinction. The basic major extinction that they like to talk about is called the PT extinction, Permian Triassic. And people can Google all these terms. I could even spell Huronian. People can Google this and all the information is available. But this happened 252 million years ago, where the Earth went wild with extinction, fires, earthquakes, temperatures. And it's estimated by geologists, by the ancient climatologists, that as much as 90% of the life forms that were on the planet at this time, 252 million years ago, went extinct. So then life came back. And finally, it happened over and over 65 million years ago, the dinosaurs. And there's no doubt about it. They have discovered a site in Colorado, not far from where I live, near Denver, where the Earth has been exposed and the geologists can go crazy. They can see the whole history of the planet in this one formation. And they point to this strip, this line, thin band, and they say, that's it, 65 million years ago. You can see the evidence of the asteroid, meteor, whatever it was, that hit the Earth. And underneath that, they have found 60% of all dinosaur species, of all dinosaurs, in Colorado alone. Montana too, but in Colorado. Above the 65 million year line, not one dinosaur fossil has ever been found. They went totally extinct, except for birds. Birds are actually dinosaurs, but everything else, the terrestrial land animals, totally disappeared. So here's one to throw out. Again, people might have thought that the podcast that you guys did, talking about the changes are going to come, this and that, everything's going to go off. I mean, it's nothing to what's happened in the past. Listen to this figure, and people have to try, again, to see the big picture. They're estimating 99.6%. I'll say it again. 99.6% of every life form species that's ever been on this planet has gone extinct. So we're only 0.4% that's left here today. And it's quite possible that human beings could go extinct. The rest of life doesn't need us. Life would go on. In fact, there are many creatures on the planet today who would be glad to see human beings go, because their habitats would come back and they would thrive. But so that's the point. If people want to understand the big picture, the last 10,000 years on this planet are in a relatively safe geological period. What people say, what about all these earthquakes? What about the volcanoes? What about tornadoes and all this and all that? They are minor to what's happened on our planet in the past. I mean, you're talking about 10 plus earthquakes have happened way in the past. Volcanoes that destroyed whole sections. I mean, again, the biggest caldera we have in the United States is in Yellowstone. That was a super volcano. If that ever goes off again, we can kiss our asses goodbye. It's going to be the end of the United States. So and it's rumbling. They see evidences now with the geysers, with Old Faithful going off faster each time. There's evidences that it's coming. It may be coming. Maybe it's going to come. Nobody knows for sure. But again, 99.6% of all life forms that have ever been on this planet have gone extinct.
Well, I always think this is all a journey of perception, and we choose to embody here now on purpose.
Yes.
But we have so many different. I am not just Patricia in this
Yes.
body.
Right.
We exist on so many different planes and so many different levels. This is our current game board.
Absolutely.
And who knows what we will create next.
Barbara Hand-Clow, who's also a great student of Hakeim, was the one I really learned astrology from. Barbara Hand-Clow said she was living a parallel life in the Pleiades, that we're actually living on other planets and other solar systems at the same time we're living here. Who knows? Maybe so, maybe not. But certainly, there are certainly many different planes of existence. This illusion of third dimension is an illusion.
Is an illusion, 100%.
It's all about quantum entanglement, so that's not so far.
I love that expression, quantum entanglement. That's beautiful. I love it. Quantum physics keeps going on and on and on. Exactly. Quantum entanglement is a beautiful thing to study and to understand. Most people cannot handle it. Every cause is an effect. Every effect is a cause. Everything's connected to everything else. That was one of his major teachings. Something can happen billions of miles out in space. It does affect the Earth. Everything happens to the sun affects the Earth, as you talked about solar winds and the things that are going to happen to our electronics. Everything is connected to everything else.
100%.
That picture on the left is when he came to the United States in the 1980s. He was called an ambassador of peace from Egypt. He actually met George H.W. Bush. And I would ask him, Papa, what happened when you shook his hand? What did you think? He said, there was nobody there. He shook his hand and he didn't see anything. That's it. But yeah,
that was before he was president.
That's right. Exactly. He was vice president. Hakeim actually led Henry Kissinger on a tour.
Yeah, I that's in the article there too. Yeah. He actually guided him when Kissinger came to Egypt in 1964.
Absolutely. And it's unfortunate when Barack Obama came to Egypt in 2009, Papa was already gone, and Zahir Was gave him a personal tour.
I remember.
Barack Obama had met Hakeim, oh boy, it would have been a whole different story.
They made everybody in the village literally close their blinds. Nobody was allowed to be caught looking out windows.
Right.
It was just crazy.
You're right.
But yeah, I remember that. I was here.
And it still happens now when Sisi comes around. Everybody's got to stay hidden and be blocked off.
Oh, I had a very powerful person in government in my neighborhood. And boy, every time he moved, we didn't go anywhere.
That's right. Well, I think actually Sisi has a villa in the neighborhood where you live. I think he does have he has about 5 different homes.
Oh,
I think he has a home in where you are. Where you are is a beautiful part, a beautiful section. So what he's doing here now is he's pointing to the pyramid. This is at Edfu, which a lot of people don't see. You see he's got Asgat and Per Asgat. The pyramid, which is on the very right of the plate, the house of the netter, the Per Netter, showing that it's also the house of water. That's a beautiful expression, and that's why I wanted you to have that. I took that picture to say that water was infinitely connected to the pyramids.
Yep.
Per Netter, Per Asgat. That's from the pyramid code that she passed away, bless her. Carmen Bolter did with Hakeim in 2009. Many people come to write to me, oh, I saw Hakeim in the pyramid code. That's why I got turned on to him. Well, I say that's nice, but read my books, because they didn't ask him the proper questions. They didn't understand what he was saying, but it wasn't high def, so it's a great video because he was. But they always had to, I have the outtakes because I got in touch with the producer, bless her soul. She sent me the outtakes. It was never supposed to be done without their permission. That's another story. But it's
you gave them to me. I have copy.
I have 2 copies of it on external drives. But they constantly had to stop because they were doing it in his house in the village, and there would be cars in the street. They should have done it at the manor house in a private room.
They had a difficult time of it. Yeah, you're right.
They kept asking him. He would go off, and they would say, "Wait a minute, Hakim, we have to do it again." And he would get tired, and each time they would do a take and a take and a take. He would
There were
get
so
less and
many
less.
times he was going so deep, and I just wanted him to continue. And a truck would go by, and they'd stop him.
And to start all over again. And so,
Exactly.
and this is why I don't like to do multiple. Why I didn't want to do another interview with a person, because sometimes it's the best time the first take. And a lot of times in films, when they get a really solid performance from an actor, Robin Williams has talked about this often, bless his memory. He would say the first take was always the best. They like to do multiple takes. Okay, do it again. I want you to do more. A lot of movies they take multiple takes over and over and over, and then they get the one they like, and that's cut, a wrap, take it. But sometimes the first take is the best take, and it was with him. When he would start going, just as you said, he would get deep, and he'd get deep, and he'd say, "Wait a minute, Hakim, there was a car came in. We got to start over again," and it wouldn't be as good. I had multiple takes of his life. He would get tired. He was 80. This was in 2007. He's 81 years old. He's getting tired. So the more they did it, the worse he got. And so they didn't know what they were doing. But I told people,
I'm grateful that we have those tapes.
Exactly. It's priceless. Every video we have of him is priceless. And I have many videos, starting in 1992. And
I just added this short one today because I've talked about this. I'm sure Allan will be familiar with what he's about to say.
Great. Okay, go.
So yeah, it's just a short clip.
Good. People love to hear his voice.
This is just an intro.
That's nice. Nice intro.
They have same senses I have, the five recognize what they can see, they can hear, they can touch, they can make their own conclusion when they look at it. They don't want anybody to look at it for them and they can say, "Oh yes, it's only 6,000 years." No. Use your mind, use your own. Yeah, and I call all the people now that we have as people, as such people, healthy people, healthy says full capacity of senses 360. Now, when I work with only 5, so I'm crippled, right? So I'm asking now, I'm talking, I'm calling like calling for prayer. Wake up! We have it. We got it. Just know that we have it, and it works. Yeah.
Thank you, sweetheart. That's beautiful. He would always say to our groups, he says, "Please excuse me what I'm saying, but if you think you only have 5 senses, you are crippled. You are crippled. We have 360, 180 we label feminine, 180 we label masculine. Those are the Neteru. They are not gods and goddesses. They are principles, forces of nature. They are senses that we have within him. So the whole purpose of his teachings, the whole purpose of what we do in the field is for people to experience Isis within themselves. Horus, Osiris, Sekhmet, Hepnet, every one of them are within us. We awaken those senses, and he would always say to people, don't think, don't believe, know. And that sounds arrogant. That sounds egotistical. When I say that to people, they hear, "Oh, you're just on an ego trip." Well, okay, but I know. It's as simple as that. It's as simple as that.
I think that's the question I get more from people. I get so many people writing to me with questions, and that, especially the first, maybe 8 years that I lived here, it was, what are the 360 senses?
Right.
But
right.
Yeah.
That is such a basic teaching that he put out there. He said, "Let them come in. Open your mind." That's what he called the awakening. And he knew that he was not going to live to see it. I'm pretty sure that I'm not. Maybe you're not either. But it's generations. It takes generations and generations before people will stop using the word pharaoh, because there were no male pharaohs. It's the high house, the woman's house. She chose who was to be her consort. They weren't even kings, he said, in the old kingdom. They were the Horus. That's why you chose Horus rising. The Horus was the male. She was to be Isis. Isis chooses her brother to be the ruler, the first king of Egypt, Osiris, wizard. And it's always, there are no male pharaohs, but everybody is so hung up in the word. I'm jumping on Jocelyn about it. No, I said, I'm going to hammer it, keep hammering you, lady, until you stop saying Pharaoh Seti, Pharaoh Ramses. It's king. You can say king. Okay. But they were not pharaohs. There were no male pharaohs. It was the matriarchy. Descent went from mother to daughter. The woman, the closest word we have, they had no word for marriage. They had no word for husband. They had no word for wife. You could say consort. Okay, that's the closest to have it. But she would choose. That's why the famous statue, which will hopefully be in the new museum of the third king. Anyway, it shows his sister presenting him. I have chosen him. He is your king. He is the Horus. So that's the role the male had. He was Horus. She was Osiris, Isis. And that was it. Isis always chose. She wears the throne on her head, which is a sign of royalty. And also, the term that Hakim would use, which is used in Arabic today, Hemet, which meant woman of power. She was the wife. The Greeks used to make fun of the Khemitians, the Egyptians, when they came. Oh, a man is just an occupant in his wife's house. Well, that's true. But they were more enlightened than you were, Greeks, because they knew the women were the source of energy, the source of life, the source of power. And she would sit on he said the throne that's on Isis's head was for the Hemeti, the woman of the house, to sit on a high chair with her feet on a stool, and she was to be served. Opposite of what's in Egypt today in a Muslim culture, opposite what's in most cultures. Wife makes dinner, she feeds the husband first, she feeds the children, she eats last. It was the opposite in ancient Kemet. Once the daughters became old enough to cook, they made the meals. They served mama first, then the children, the husband last, the man last, not first. So it's opposite of what is today. Everything once is opposite of patriarchy. Where men are on top, women are on the bottom. And in matriarchy, men were not on the bottom. They understood their role. They were enlightened, realized males. There was no lesser, but they understood women were the source of life. Women were the highest. Women were not just equal in ancient Kemet, they were considered superior. I got it out.
You did. Well done.
On the left is our last tour in 2007. He told me in 1998. He said, "Stephen, I'm going to introduce you to the greatest of Nubian musicians." Okay, and that's when I met him. Muhammad Ramadan, who's in the middle. Tariq is on the left. Tariq now is a grown man. I saw Tariq. He came up behind me, tapped me on the shoulder, and it was so wonderful. Because this is how I did. This is wonderful. We came to the dock at Aswan, and I'm with Tariq, our group, our guide Tariq. And I'm asking the guys that are having this, do you know what Tariq is? Tariq. And they would look at me like, there's a million Tariqs. Who's he talking about? Tariq. So I said, Abu Diab, which means his son. That's like if we talk about Yusuf, and I called him that when he said Abu Adam. It means the father of your son. So that means that's what so when I said Abu Diab, they said, oh, he's on the island. He's already out there. So we were walking around at Philae in the temple, and I could see that both Tito and Tariq were smiling and they were laughing. And Teresa stood, he came up and tapped me on the back, and I turned around and there was Tariq. Yeah. And now he's a grown man in his 30s. He's got another son, and what a great time.
Yep. He still takes us on our tours, our boats over.
I love him. He's such a sweet man. I love him so much. Wonderful. And he's his son. He never told me that he was Muhammad's son. He's Tariq Ramadan. He's his son. And to the right there is a little daughter, Shireen. She was a little girl at that time. And I think I asked him. I think he's still alive. He doesn't come to the dock anymore.
He is still alive. I have a picture, my last picture of him, which was it was in 2020 during the pandemic. So, yeah, not that long ago. But he wasn't he wasn't going on the boats anymore.
No, he doesn't. He doesn't even come to the dock anymore. They said no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In fact, that on the right.
Ah, look at that picture. That's great.
Yeah.
He's such a wonderful man.
Still wearing that great turban.
And he's from the Matuki tribe, from the tribe that Hakim loved the most of the Nubians. And the kisser is the name of his instrument.
That's right.
And we used to love to sing with him. And Yusuf would play tambourine and it would sing, and I loved it so much. He would come, especially for our group.
Man, yeah, we enjoyed. He was with us for a long time.
Yes, he
on our
was.
tours.
Yes, he was there in 2017, but
Mhm.
he didn't come on the boat anymore. He didn't come on the dock.
No, he doesn't anymore.
He's
The one on
such-
the right, like I said, is in 2020, and he was being interviewed. That's why he was there that day. And I recognized him, and they said, "Oh, do you have any words to say?" And they let me say a few things that I knew about him.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah,
And
it was.
he would always say to me when he would see me, "You see Hakim, say salam alaikum for me." That's what he would say. Always say hello to Hakim for me. Yeah.
They were good friends.
Very close. Oh, I have that picture too.
That is the one I did for you. I did the one in the shop, and I did one other for someone
Well,
else.
let me explain it maybe a little bit personal here. You did this for me as a birthday present in 2009. And this is just for an example for people to understand what a great artist you are. The reason why your presentations are so beautiful is you're such a great graphic artist. You do such great presentations. You put such wonderful artwork up. And this is to show that you did this on papyrus. And it's so realistic. It's exactly like he looked at the last days of his life. And it's right above my wall. I'm pointing to it right now. It's hanging right above me. And so let me just say it. I'll say it out. Yusuf got jealous that you did it for me, and he made you do another one that they put in the shop. And I have a picture of it right here. Is the one you did for Yusuf.
That's right. I do. I have the, I had the both, and then someone else saw the one in the shop, and they wanted one. But yeah, I used tempera on papyrus, which is next to impossible. You can't make mistakes because the papyrus comes up. So it was a meticulous work of love.
And people don't know. Maybe you haven't said. I told it to Jocelyn that you're the daughter of a great artist. That your dad was a great artist.
Yeah, my dad was, and my mother was an artist. So yeah.
See, you do wonderful graphic work. That's why your presentations are so wonderful. The graphics that you put up.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Stephen. I love you. There you are in the composition.
you took the picture on the left. That's at Beni Hassan in 2007. Right. And at first he said to us, "I don't know if I can climb up, Stephen." I said, "Well, whatever." And we got to the top, and here he comes walking up.
You know, I'll never forget that because I got out of the bus and I was so excited to be everywhere. I was my second trip, and I ran up, and I was worried about Hakim because it was a long bus ride, and he was he wasn't at his best health.
Oh no!
And, I ran up, and I was the first one to that first platform.
Wow, that's a good hike. It's a good hike.
And there he was sitting there.
I know,
and
it's
in
amazing.
my state of mind at the time, I was thinking, what did he do? Beam himself up?
We used to call him, my friend Bob Vada, who's passed away, bless his memory. We used to call him a mountain goat, that he could go climb and go anywhere when he was younger.
I think he actually got a ride up.
Well, I think they escorted him. I think I saw it when he went down. He didn't go up the steps, you see. He went on the side where it was dirt, and they each one was on the side of him and helped him go up. Two guides.
He probably shouldn't have, because I think that was after that his feet started swelling.
When we got to Dendara, his knees were really going out. That's true.
But Stephen, what I remember is at each one of these sites he would go, and he hadn't been in years, and the tears would come rolling down his face. And then the keepers would come out, and their tears would come rolling.
They kiss it. You got to me tell another story. When I first, as you know, the pound has gone crazy. I mean, it's gone devalued to it's nothing. When I first came to Egypt, 1992, it was 3.38 pounds to the dollar.
Wow.
So he was old school. He used to give a pound. Now a pound is worth 2 cents, right? It's going to be 50 pounds to the dollar. It's going to be worth, they don't even have piastres anymore. Forget about piastres. He would give them a pound, but they would kiss the money and put it on next to their heart, put it in their shirts next to their heart. Always they would kiss the money, and they would kiss him and hug him and kiss him and hug him everywhere he went. He was the most venerated person in Egypt in the 90s and early 2000s. It got to a point where the younger guys didn't know who he was anymore. And sometimes he was mistreated, and he used to really piss me off. But he even today, like there's a great story where we went in the Aswan hotel, the Marriott, in Movenpick, and at Aswan, I put on his galabeah that he's wearing there. I have that galabeah. I will wear it in Egypt. And I went to dinner, and they all came around me. Oh, look at this old galabeah. And an old guy came out who was the head of the restaurant at the hotel, and he looked at me. And I said to him, yes, this galabeah used to belong to my teacher, Abd'el Hakim. And he went, oh, my God. And he hugged me, and he told all the other guys who he was. He knew it. And so then every minute they would come to our table. Do you need anything else? Can we get anything else for you? Can I help you with this? Can I help you with that? And this and that and this and that. You know, his name is still magic, which is amazing. Well, Yusuf has kept that up by doing the tours he does. His name is still magic in Egypt.
Yeah.
On the right.
Oops, sorry.
No, I don't know what that was. That was the one. That was. I think we went.
I think we're in the Nubian village there.
Maybe so. And I just posed for you there.
You posed in the car. But yeah, I just love it. And of course, this is all from the reunion tour. 2007,
yes.
Yeah.
And as you can see, my goal was he would be at the head of the group. I'd always be on his side talking to him, and he'd always be. That happened. Started in 1992, and it went through every time. I would always be right next to him, and he would be telling me things and sharing things. And in 1992, what he did was, because he immediately perceived who I was, he would talk, give this demonstration, say, like at Edfu or Kamumbo, and then he would pull me on the side and show me things and tell me things that he never would show to anybody else. He did that on every place we were. And on the right is why I wanted, and I still hope we can do that, to open our tour in front of the Middle Pyramid, because it's there that I'll give a revelation teaching how he came to understand was in that spot. That's why he always liked the spot, and he would sit down like he's doing now and have everybody gather around him, ask questions, and he would start to talk. That's what he loved to do. Sit down and have everybody gather around him.
And if there was sand, he'd draw pictures in the sand.
Absolutely. We called it the Commission chalkboard.
Yep, that's right. And we had to bring in Najiba.
Najiba. Actually means in English, she is the one. That's what Najiba means. It also means she-wolf. And yes, the mother of his children.
Yeah.
There's a great little story I could tell if you want to hear it. He knew her family. His family was friends with her family. So he knew her when she was much younger than he was. Okay. He married her, she was 13 or 14. So he seriously, he knew her when he knew her was a child. So he goes off to the military. He's gone for 4 years. He comes back. He's sitting in her home, talking to her father, and he sees outside the window. He says, "Who is that girl out there?" And the man says, "That's Najiba." He says, "Najiba," and he says, "I want to marry her." So the man said, "Oh no, she's already spoken for. We've already paid the bride price. Bride price. If you know what happens in Egypt, families get together. They make arrangements that the son's going to marry the daughter. They never may have ever talked. They've never dated, but they make arrangements for marriage, and you have to pay a price to the father, the bride price." So Hakim said, "I will pay double." And he did. And he married her. And she was probably pregnant at 14. I mean, they had 16. She was pregnant 16 times. She lost 5. There's 11. 8 sons, 3 daughters. She lost 5 of them. 16 times she got pregnant with him. And so here's a little aside. I'll tell this story because I like to tell this story. She sometimes wasn't at home. They would get into horrific fights. And she would go and leave and go stay with her family and then come back. She'd always come back when I was there because she always loved it when I came because he always behaved himself. He was always on his best when she loved when I was there. So one time I saw a fight. There was a fight between them. And she was winning the argument. She was making points and she was winning. And finally he yelled something at her and she got so mad I could see smoke coming out of her nose. Then she got up and walked out of the room. So of course I had to know. So, "Papa, what was that about?" She said, he said, "I always have an ace in the hole when it comes to arguments with her. When she gets to the point where she's winning the argument, he would yell at her, 'I pay double for you.'" She had no comeback. And that's why she'd get so mad.
I don't blame her.
I paid double for you.
Well, I loved her. She was great. She had a pet name for me.
She loved you too, yes.
Yeah, she did. She did.
She was a sweetheart. The best falafels I've ever eaten in my life were made by the hands of this woman. She was a superb cook. She taught her daughters how to cook. That's why they're all great cooks.
Yeah.
She made the best falafels I've ever eaten. Period.
Yeah, and we even made mashi together. She invited
Yes,
me one morning.
she taught all of them to make mashi. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's a tradition you have to experience at least.
Well,
once.
understand, and she was very psychic. She was very intuitive. She actually could
Oh,
go to the
what?
market.
Oh my God!
She could go to the market and talk to the vegetables, talk to the food, and it would tell her which was the ripest. And she always came home with the ripest vegetables, the ripest fruits, because she would talk to the vegetables. She would talk.
Well, like me, she had a relationship with birds, and different birds would come.
And
to her.
with plants. She had a green thumb. Everybody in the village would bring their little plants to her that were dying. She would bring them back to life.
Yep. Well, my favorite experience. I mean, she used to dance and put stuff on her head and dance.
Henna.
Experiences. But the one day, we have power outages here all the time.
All the time. I know.
And we were all on the balcony, and the lights had been out for like an hour and a half or something, and she was fed up. She raised her hands and said, "Enough!"
Alas!
Exactly, and it was fabulous, and the lights came on. Yeah, she would do stuff like that all the time.
The picture on the right is very important. Let me look.
Yeah.
Does that one after? Because he told her that when he passed, he doesn't want her to wear black, which is why you see so many women in Egypt wearing black or full outfit, because that means they're in mourning. Their husband has passed. He would tell her, "You don't go black. You don't." She put the henna back in her hair, and she wore colored galabeas. She did not wear black when he passed, because he insisted to her, "You don't do that when I pass. You be as you are." And she still put henna in her hair and wore colored galabeas, not black.
Yep, you're right. Wow.
On the bottom left is me and Teresa in 2004. We had just come out of the Great Pyramid. We were both buzzing like crazy, and we're both looking at Hakim in that picture.
Nice. Yep. And I think I don't know. I think I took the picture on the far right.
Yes, you probably did.
Yep.
Yeah.
Is that Amarna?
Yes. No,
like
it's not Amarna. Teresa never went to Amarna. We did this time.
Oh, that's right. You're absolutely right. Where are we?
That could be in the south. It's in the south.
It's definitely in the south. Maybe
The picture in the top center is the roof at Dendara.
Yeah, that was before me. That was what, 2005?
1999. 1999.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Teresa's first trip to Egypt in 2004. There was an accident. A woman fell off, and then it closed. It's now open again. It was so hot that day we didn't go. So I have a picture of us together at the staircase that leads to the roof. That was, our regenerating. But that's the roof at Dendara.
Yeah, it is. Yep.
And in the center, of course, is Sekhmet last year, 2023.
Yep, that's right. I don't know how I got a hold of the picture, but when I found it, I decided to.
It might have been on Instagram because I posted it.
Yeah, it could have been.
A lot of things have popped up on Instagram. Yep.
And then I wanted to point out that Teresa also writes beautiful, beautiful fictional books. And
Thank you.
I did read Under the Stone Pall. When I read that, I gave copies to all my friends. I thought it was wonderful.
Right.
I think that was after our first trip. And Hakim's in that book.
And the leading character is a character that's a Jewish Egyptologist. So who do you think she was basing that on?
Exactly. Exactly.
Yes. I gave her the name Tahir Nur Aram, which means the pure light of the pyramids, the old. And he loved it. And I told him, "Oh, Teresa wrote a book about you. We call you Tahir." He said, "Oh, great. I love it." He blessed the book. That's in 2006. And Beneath the Stone Pall came after that. And then Under the Stone Pall, Beneath the Hallowed Hill is the second one, which takes place at Glastonbury.
Exactly.
Druidic stuff.
And of course, she has many more as well. But excellent books, and all part of the experience.
Well, I don't want to jinx it, but I'm telling you because you should know that she has pitched now to Hollywood producers. We're keeping our fingers crossed. Maybe there's going to be a series on Netflix or Hulu or something. That's,
Wouldn't that be fantastic?
Uh,
When I was reading the books, I could even imagine. I thought way back then, and when they were introduced, when I read the book, it was right after our first tour in 2005.
right, because it came out. Yeah, it came out. That first one came out in 2000, early 2006.
Okay, well then, yeah, it was after our first tour.
Right.
Yeah, I thought it was fantastic, and
It is.
while I was reading it, I thought this should be on film.
It should. It should.
Yeah.
It's so much because Dan Brown beat it to print, but it's a story of the bloodline of Jesus and all this and all that. So when the Da Vinci Code came out, she got so mad because she had already written the draft, and he said he beat me to print. But the truth is, as great as the Da Vinci Code is, and it's the favorite of mine of Dan Brown's books, Under the Stone Paw is better.
Oh yeah.
And the image there is 1992. That's Barbara Hand Clow on the right,
Wow,
Dr. Toby Weiss on the left, who was the head of what they called in those Power Places tours. In the 80s was the first group doing spiritual journeys to Egypt, and Hakim was their primary guide.
Yep. He worked with some of the greats. You can name them all off, and I didn't want to put a lot of pictures up there, but it's amazing how many people he worked
John
with.
Anthony West, Greg Braden, of course. Yep.
Yep. Truly
And Barbara.
spectacular. And even
Barbara,
when I
go ahead.
Tell
No, go ahead.
your story about Barbara, and then I'll tell my story.
Well, Barbara has written in her books, my Egyptian teacher, Hakim. She always mentioned him, but she never got deep into the teachings. And that's why she wanted to publish a Land of Osiris when she was still the head of Barron Company, but she sold Barron Company to Inner Traditions. And she gave them recommendations for books that she would like to see them published, but they turned me down. So that's why I went with David Hatcher Children's and Adventures Unlimited Press. They had the opportunity. They had the opportunity to have it, and they passed on it. But she was going to publish it under.
She came with us in 2018, if I remember, but she didn't.
What's that?
Barbara Hand Clow. I think she wanted to come on our tour in 2018.
Really? Because she sort of went into isolation. She
did. But I heard from somebody that she was entertaining the idea that I think she really wanted.
Wow, because something happened in 1995. She would never tell me the details, but she said her life was threatened, and she never came back to Egypt after 1995.
Oh, how sad.
Yep.
How sad. Yeah.
But she's still a great astrologer. People can go on her website. She has a great teaching about Pluto being in Capricorn, which we just came out of, and Pluto now going into Aquarius, which is part of the reason we're going to see so much upheaval. Is because of Pluto in Aquarius. But she is the greatest. I learned astrology from her mainly. She's a great astrologer.
I've read many of her books. I can't say I've read them all, but I've most of them, and very, very enjoyable.
She's great. She
and I think you should tell the Grateful Dead story.
Okay, I love to tell this story. I first went to Egypt in 1992, and I met a woman who was leading a subgroup in the tour group that I had for Power Places Tours. Her name was Nikki Scully. Nikki Scully was married to Rock Scully, who was the publicist of the Grateful Dead. Way back in the late 70s, the Grateful Dead, Jerry Garcia, had an idea. Let's go to Egypt and do free concerts. 1978, they went to Egypt. They did exactly as he said. They put up a stage in front of the Sphinx, and the Grateful Dead did free concerts. And they had Egyptian musicians come up and play with them. That's why to this day, and even last year, you can see young boys, young kids in Egypt going around with Grateful Dead t-shirts because they made such an impression from that time that it's still there. And you see them with Bob Marley t-shirts too, who's also idolized and venerated in Egypt. So here's the story. She said that she had gone to Egypt with the Grateful Dead, and she met Hakim, and then she used Hakim as a tour guide for many years. So one day around 2004, I'm sitting with him and smoking shisha, and I said to him, Papa, and of course I always called him that. It just happened spontaneously in 1998. I started calling him Papa, and he loved it. I said to him, I heard that you had the Grateful Dead here in the house. He said, oh, yes. Silence. Okay. Papa, did you smoke shisha with the Grateful Dead? He said, yes, of course. So I said, you smoked shisha with Jerry Garcia? And he said, you mean the guitar player? I said, yeah, the guitar player. That's all he was to him. You could be a king, you could be a beggar off the street. They were all the same to him. He didn't, Henry Kissinger, whatever. He didn't. It didn't make a difference to him. Yeah, the guitar player. So yeah, he the great. What the story is, in 1978, the Grateful Dead went into the village, and they stopped somebody on the street who could speak good English, and they said, "Well, who's the local wise man? Who's the local person we should talk?" Oh, they pointed to the Awyan house. Go there, Abd'el Hakim. And they went, and they learned, and they sat. They never have spoken. As far as I know, any of the Grateful Dead never spoke about it publicly. But they sat and they smoked shisha with him and talked and learned from him in 1978. Yeah, the guitar player.
I love it.
Oh, wow. I didn't know you had this picture.
I don't know why I do, but I do. I just love it.
Oh, my God, because this is an anniversary. That's 50 years ago. The summer of 1974, I went to France. I got friendly with a woman who's a wonderful lady named Dr. Margaret Conkey. She now teaches at Berkeley. She was teaching at San Jose State. She arranged for me to go to France and learn archaeology from this great man who's sitting at the left, is Professor Francois Borde, who is director of antiquities for all southwestern France. He had a doctorate in geology, and he was one of the greatest prehistorians of the 20th century. He not only taught me archaeology, he taught me basic geology too, and it's why I love geology. And here we are sitting and talking. Somebody snapped this picture. He's doing some great sharing with me. And there I am in the hippie days, as you can see, in the 70s. This is 50 years ago, this summer, 1974.
Incredible. I love it.
And that's where I learned archaeology, from this great man. Oh, you do have the picture. This is from the early 50s. If you look all the way on the left, the man sitting on the horse, all the way to the left is Hakim, wearing a suit and tie. That's when he first started to. And here's a funny thing for people who love to play with numbers. And that leads to another story, which I told all the guides, and they loved it. He was part, when they first, 1952, after the revolution, which overthrew the king Farouk, and they started, and eventually Nasser took over. They started the Department of Antiquities, and they started issuing licenses to guides. So Hakim's guide number, and I saw it on his license, was number 56. He was part of the first class of 100 guides. And he was an active tour guide for 56 years. From 1952 to 2008, when he passed away, his license was still active.
Yeah.
So here's a great story that comes out of that. 1999, in May, we did a conference. Chris Dunn was Lloyd Pye, a lot of famous people were there, and we went to Memphis. And Memphis is a site that has an ancient old King Mill temple of Isis. Only the tops of the columns. You and I went there in 2012, Patricia. I have pictures of you there. And only the tops of the columns were there. And they decided not to excavate it. They would put a sign there, off limits, prohibited, forbidden. Hakim would bring the group there and say, "You see this sign? Let's go over it." Then we go over it, we go in. So, as would normally happen, one of the tour guides who was jealous of him, which happened quite often, ratted on him. So I come onto the bus, we're about to leave, and people come in, Stephen, something's the matter. What's the matter? Hakim has been arrested. He's in the office of the tourist police. He's been arrested. I said, listen, I gathered everybody around me. Listen, I want you all to follow me, what we're going to do, and we have to stand as one. We have to all say, you have to listen to me and say you're all going to commit to what I'm going to do. Yes, we all agreed. We went into the office. There was a captain. Hakim was sitting up at the desk next to this captain. And I came in and I asked the guy, he spoke fluent English, what's going on? I said, oh, he has violated it. He is arrested. He's going to jail. I said, no, sir. I said, if he's going to jail, we're all going to jail too. And my first call will be to the American embassy. He said, oh, no. It's not you. It's him. I said, no, sir. You don't understand what I'm saying. We're going to jail if he's going to jail. So the guy that was leading our tour was Fahmy, one of the Fayeds, was Gouda Fayed. And he was very good friends with the general of the Antiquities Police. So he got on his cell phone and he started talking blah, 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 blah. And he handed the phone to this captain. And they're talking blah, 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 blah. Okay. He puts the phone down. He says something to Hakim. Hakim reaches in his pocket, takes something out and gives it to him. The man looks at it and says, okay, puts it in the drawer. He says, okay, everything's fine. He's not going to jail, but he's been suspended. I took his license. And I see Hakim is laughing and he's smiling. And I'm about to say something, and Hakim puts his hand up. Don't say anything. Okay. So we get on the bus, I'm to the back of the bus talking with some people, and I see he's in the front talking. Everybody's laughing and joking. I said, what the hell is going on? I said, Papa, what's happening? I go up there. What happened? He took your license. Oh, he said, Stephen, I always keep in my pocket a bunch of suspended licenses just for this very occasion. I said, he didn't look at the date. He just looked at my picture and he put it away. Ah, we had a big laugh. So I told this story to all the guides last year, and they all loved it. But I left out the end. There's another part to the story. We then went to the Sakara restaurant, a great buffet at those times, and we were going to eat. He gets off the bus first. I'm walking in front of the bus, and I see coming down the road is a flatbed truck full of young guys, all in their 20s, and they got pitchforks and they got shovels, and they're coming and they're all animated and excited, and they jump off and they start talking to him, and they're very angry and they're very excited, and he starts talking with them, and they're making jokes. All of a sudden, they're hugging and kissing. They get back on the truck and they go away. Okay, I got to find out what this is about too. So I stop him before he gets into the restaurant. Papa, what was it about? Oh, those were Awyanis from Abu Sir. Now his ancestral homeland was from Abu Sir. So he said, they heard there was no internet in those days. There wasn't by a cell phone. The word had gotten by word of mouth back to the village, and they asked Hakim if they could go and kill this guy. They were going to kill a captain of the antiquities police. They would have been in jail for the rest of their lives. And they said, no, it's okay. And they went off. But they were going to kill this guy because they had insulted the leader of their tribe. And that was a major insult. And they were going to kill this man with a pitchfork, with shovels. So that's the story. That's one of my favorite Hakim stories.
And so believable. I love it.
He always kept expired licenses in his pocket for just that occasion, he said.
Of course he did.
Oh, yeah. He was always one step ahead of him. That's the pyramid code on the left.
Yeah.
That's a picture I might have taken. That's at the stela of a priest.
Now, I took that one. That was on our reunion tour at Memphis. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. That was.
I just love his smile. His smile, his laugh was just so precious.
I used to love to tell him jokes. That was the biggest thing. He loved to laugh. We would laugh together.
Sit back and clap. Yeah.
He loved American humor.
And there you are.
You and I. Yep. That's more recent. And with Susan, that's more recent too. Yep. Susan's a great geologist. She's taught us so much about stone, and that's why I love to use the formal terms like travertine, which she taught us. Which the granite, it's not red granite, it's not rose granite, it's cyanite granite that comes from Aswan, and that's why she would always give us the proper terms to use, and that's what I prefer to use. Like porphyritic diorite, a wonderful term. That was the most favorite stone. All the boxes in the Serapeum are mostly porphyritic diorite. There's only two that are cyanite. There's one that's granodiorite. That's actually, you can see the transition between. But porphyritic diorite was full of mica, little bits of quartz crystal. It's the most resonant of stone. It was the favorite stone of the ancient Cometians, along with granite, along with basalt, along with travertine. But porphyritic diorite was their absolute favorite. And we learned that from Susan. She's a great geologist.
It's amazing. And with even just understanding the energetics of the land, the sites, why they choose the sites, why they choose the certain stones. We just did an interview with Susan about Turkey. So yeah, just last week.
I love to hear what you guys say about Göbekli Tepe. That could be another time. But
cool.
Hakim would say, according to what you just said, the site dictates what's there.
Yeah. So
wherever there's three things present. There's underground running water. There's igneous rock, which is granite diorite, and there's crystals, natural source of crystal. That's what causes the energy of the sites, particularly at the Holy of Holies, where it's centered. That's why the Holy of Holies is there. That's where the energy is at the strongest. And that's why he would like to lead meditations at the Holy of Holies, to feel the matter, to feel the energy. And it's because at all the sites, the water, the underground the Nile is still there. Underground running water, activating crystal and rock, and crystal produces the electromagnetic energy fields that we feel at the sites.
That's right.
The site dictates what's there.
Yep.
On the left is a fallen obelisk at Karnak, which I'm going to take people, which is a cyanide granite.
It's not fallen anymore. They stood it up.
Really?
Yes.
Oh no! When did they do that?
They didn't like us knocking on it and making it ring. But I love this showing Hakim doing it and then us doing it
Yes.
in 2 different time periods. But yeah, no, they stood it up on an altar, like.
Do they have still chains and is it still blocked
They
off?
still have it blocked up. Actually, I think we did go and sit there, and they come up and say, "Move."
Oh, it's terrible. You see, again, when they know that we're pointing to something that's important, they try to stop it. I mean, they do that all the time.
Yeah, they didn't like us.
You bang on that stone with your hand, and it's like listening. Alan, I think you experienced that. It's like listening to the ringing of a bell. And people look around like, where's the sound coming from? They would look at me. Where's the sound coming from? It's coming from the stone.
Yeah.
So resonant.
Yep, antenna for the earth.
Exactly, girl. You got it.
Mary.
Mary, of course, where the name Mary comes from. Mary, the beloved. It was a title, like Sarah is Sarah. Sarai in Hebrew becomes the name Sarah. Sarah, the birth of the second stage of the sun. Mary, where Mary comes from. So Mary was a title. It wasn't a name.
Yep. Most definitely.
Okay, we got it.
And
this is why we want you, Jocelyn and I want you to come south with us. I know you're going to determine it yourself whether you're going to do it according to the heat, the temperature. I'm asking the netters to give us decent temperature at the end of October next year, because this is you. This site is at Philae. For years, Hakim would always point to the site, to this area, and say it was very important. But he would not say why. They also have a sign again, it's no admittance, forbidden. Hakim would bring the group and say, you see the sign? Let's go in. And we'd go in. And it was all musicians there. He said that site was very important because it shows all the musicians of Jehutis there. But why? He never said. Who found it out was Patricia Awyan. And that's why I took this picture on the left in 2017 to show her pointing to it. The picture on the right I took just last year. When I took our guide, Tariq, and I'm telling him the Sphinx is Tefnut, it's 50,000 years old. And you know, when an Egyptian doesn't agree with you, but they want to be polite, they don't say anything. They get quiet. They don't say anything. So I would say, and he worked with Zahi Hawass. So I had to be careful what I said about Zahi Hawass because he worked with Hawass. So I said to him, here, I want to show you proof that the Sphinx was Tefnut. He said, okay, show me. And this is late. The Philae is Greco-Roman. It's very late period. And even then, they knew that Tefnut was the Sphinx. And Patricia found it. She showed it to me. I showed it to everybody after that. And you can see it on the right. You have the king at that time. That's his cartouche on the left. He's presenting the Sphinx to Tefnut. What is going on? What the story is, supposedly, the sound current, the energy had gotten disturbed in Egypt. Something was off. And they were telling the priests it's because Tefnut is left being the Sphinx. And the Sphinx was supposed to guard the energy, control the energy that comes into Kemet. And she had left. So they prayed, they asked all the netters, please get her to come back and be the Sphinx. So that's why what you have there is they went to Jehuti and they said, we have to get her to come back. So he sent in musicians to make sweet music for her and to bring her flowers and incense. And so there he's offering a statue of the Sphinx to her, begging her to come back and be the Sphinx again. And Tariq looked at that, he read the inscription, and he's great. He really understands the glyphs. And he said, yes, there's her glyph, right up there in the middle register.
Oh, yeah, that's
Tefnut. Tefnut. She is Tefnut. And it's clearly saying what Patricia taught us. They're asking her to come back, restore the energy flow, Egypt, become the Sphinx again.
They're all cajoling her to return. She represents the time when Egypt was lush and beautiful and full of water. And she is the moisture. You said it, Tefnut.
Exactly.
She is the moisture, and she is the Sphinx because that's right there was where the docks were, where one of the branches of the El Nil was, and so much more. This whole dynamic of the ebb and flow of water is what her story tells.
Absolutely.
And so there was a mythology that she gets upset that Egypt falls out of Ma'at.
Right.
She goes south to Ethiopia, to Nubia, right? And she
Come
leaves
back.
Egypt dry and desolate. And of course, this relates to the floods, but it's also a much greater cycle.
Beautiful.
And
the,
so,
the most important thing is that even at this time period, Greco-Roman Egypt, maybe 200 BCE, they knew that the Sphinx was Tefnut and not Khafra, making an offering to the sun. There's never an inscription anywhere that says the Sphinx was Khafra. No, all he did was do a restoration. That's why the stele in front of him had his name there, but it wasn't in a cartouche. It was saying Khafra did restoration work of Tefnut, never saying Khafra was the Sphinx. So even in this late period of time, 200 BCE, they knew Tefnut was the Sphinx.
Yep, absolutely.
And I always give you the credit for that. I'm going to talk with Jocelyn about this a great deal, that you deserve the master credit for being the one. Hakim always said it was an important site, but he never told me why. You found out why.
Well, these are the things that I wanted. The things he said, I needed to find out why Tefnut was the Sphinx, because he never explained that either. And, you know, these are the things that I wanted to continue on with his work, is
Wonderful.
to figure out why he said what he said.
Well, he passed down an old story that was told to him by a Sufi master, that when Nut, the great mother, wanted to, there were no statues at this time, when she wanted to manifest on the planet, she chose the Giza Plateau, she spit, and that spit was just an outcropping of limestone, which geologist Robert Schoch called a yardang. Just an undistinguished growth of limestone coming out of the plateau. It's 70 million years old, formed under the ocean. And then they decided to carve a statue of the Great Mother, and it was the spit of the mother, Tefnut. She is moisture, humidity, and saliva. Now, people would ask, why spit? Hakim would say, because every time, and I use the scientific term, every time we expectorate, there's no mass, there's no volume, there's no weight. You can't measure saliva, and therefore they're saying, the ancient people, you can't measure and understand the Great Mother. But if you must, we'll make a statue of her. And that, he said, was 54,000 years ago. And I just recently told Jocelyn why. I'm going to tell it to her in podcast. Why did he choose that date? Because the Sufi master never told him a date on the Sphinx or the date of ancient Kemet. Just told him that it was ancient. Pyramids were not tombs. The Sphinx is much older than they say. That's all he was taught at 5-6 years old. Then he comes and he understands it. That's why we're going to start in the middle, because it's in the middle of the Great Pyramid, of the second pyramid, that he comes to the revelation. But I told her, you have been to the Awyan house, of course you lived there. She, of course, is not, and we're not going there. But Hakim's bedroom was oriented. His bed, his head would face east. So that when he would wake up in the morning, he would look right at the Sphinx. Because there's no, as you know, Patricia, there's no windows in their house, just shutters. In the wintertime, when it gets cold, they close shutters. But in the summertime, the windows are always open. So he would wake up and he'd look right at the Sphinx. And when he was a young man, he would get up before dawn every day, go and sit behind the rump of the Sphinx. And I've been there, I've meditated at that spot where he would sit, and he would watch, because he was told by the Sufi master, when the Sphinx was constructed, she would look at the sun coming up at noon. But even more important than that, this is why they call it the dog days of summer. At the end of July, Sirius is the dog star, to the Greeks, the dog that's following the hunter, Orion. Sirius would rise before the sun, and you could see Sirius in the sky. So he said when she was constructed, she was to look at Sirius coming up at dawn, and the sun comes up at noon. But he would say, when he was a young man, and this is 70 years ago, he would see that the sun rises today at 2 o'clock, not at noon. So he concluded in his mind, 2 o'clock meant 2 precessional years, which the Cometians themselves called the Great Year. Approximately 26,000 years is a precession. He took 26,000 times 2, 52. He said to me first in 1992, when I'm standing there in front of the spot, I have a picture of myself there, I think I sent it to you, that he saw at 2 o'clock, he would say to us, the Sphinx, she, pointing to her, is 54,000 years old. That's when I first heard him say that. And that's where he came up with the date. 2 precessional years. 26 times 2.
Yeah,
56.
I remember you telling that story.
That's how he dated the Sphinx. And nobody, for a couple of years, now you've got there supposedly was some, I don't even want to get into this, geologists in Ukraine, geologists, not archaeologists, not Egyptologists, who said that the Sphinx is 800,000 years old. So I said, well, if she's 800,000 years old, there'd be nothing left of her. There'd be no face, there'd be no body. It would be just a totally eroded stone. And I said, who was around 800,000 years ago to carve the Sphinx? Aliens? No, come on, give me a break. 50,000 years, because now we're getting so much information as you're picking up yourself in the last 10, 15 years, 16 years since he passed. And I'm going to say this now, as we said before we came on, this is apropos that we're talking at this time, Alan, because 2 days from now, August 23rd, is 16 years ago that Hakeim left us. And Patricia was the one who called me in the afternoon. Yusuf called her to tell her father had passed. She called me to tell me that Hakeim had passed. 2 days from now, 16 years ago. So it's nothing by accident. So all in these 16 years since he's gone, we just keep getting verifications. We now have a geological marker that the Sphinx is at least 30,000 years old. People can Google it. It's called the Mousterian Pluvial. When it rained very hard and for almost hundreds, if not thousands of years, all of North Africa was rain. That could be the only time the erosion that we see in the body of the Sphinx, which is by water, not by wind and sand, by water. It has not significantly rained in Egypt to do that in 10,000 years. So she's at least, with a geological marker, 30,000 years old. That's on the Giza Plateau. It's right behind the Sphinx. It's one of these cyanite ashlars that Chris Dunn loves. We did whole teachings about that. It shows advanced machining, a curvature on it that is even difficult to do today with you can't do it with lasers. You can't cut granite with lasers. Even with high technology today, it would be very hard to create these things. And the whole wall of the Sphinx was covered with these granite ashlars. Even blew Robert Schoch's mind, and he couldn't explain it either.
Okay. So many things, yeah, exactly. That can't be explained. And here's your
Beautiful.
Yes, which I love, and he's pointing to it in the picture.
It's at the roof at Dendar. That's why it's great to go up there. High house. Now I have a picture which I sent to
the one I have here is at Philae.
Okay, the one I sent is from the roof because it shows the glyph of Hathor right in the upper column, clearly saying the first was Hathor, not Horus, where the word pharaoh comes from. The Greeks called it Pharaoh.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. And there he is pointing to Egypt, Het Kapata, Egyptos, which the Greeks called Egypt, which of course he said Kemet was much before. That's where the word Egypt comes from. People say, oh no, it comes from Coptos. No, Egyptos doesn't from Coptos. It comes from Het Kapata, which is right there, which the
Coptos comes from that.
Right. The Greeks call it Egyptos.
Yeah, all Egyptians are Coptic or Egyptos, but that's where the word Coptic came from.
Right. Het Kapata, the place of the manifestation of Ptah, and it's only the one site, Memphis, Mennefer in the ancient terms.
Yep, that's right. And there you are. I think this is 14. I could be wrong, but you've been we're at this for quite some time, Stephen.
Yeah, I know. And you kept telling people he keeps doing the same presentation over and over because you're always updating, you're always putting great graphics and doing new presentations every year. You kept telling people, yeah, that's the same thing because that was it. That was enough for me.
They needed to hear it. It wasn't a bad thing because it's the basics that, if you don't know the basics, you can't go deeper.
And anyway, I'm not as technologically computer savvy as you are to keep doing it. And anyway, I don't do it anymore. Like I'm not bringing my laptop to Egypt. I'm not going to do formal presentations. We're just going to do discussion groups like Hakeim would do. I want you and Jocelyn to do the formal lectures. Your lectures are incredible. I particularly tell people to go to the lecture you did for Jocelyn at the Indigenous Conference of Wisdom Keepers. You did a concise hour, and in that hour, you put so much incredible material. And people would always say to me, you can't give them everything at once. I mean, when you first started doing lectures in Egypt, you were doing 3-hour lectures, and people were falling asleep. I'm trying to tell you, Patricia,
But they loved it.
people don't have the attention span, though. They're falling asleep. Now, if you do 90 minutes, 2 hours, you can do. But the hour lecture you did for Jocelyn was incredible because you covered so much in that hour. Each slide you put up was a whole lecture in itself. It was incredible. It was a wonderful presentation. I send a lot of people to see that one because you had it so down in that presentation. But yeah, I mean, you got to understand, especially when I tell Jocelyn, you don't do lectures at night. Do lectures in the afternoon. We go to the sites as early as possible, have lunch, do an afternoon lecture, and then they have dinner. If you do a lecture at night, people are wiped out. They've been to the sites. Their attention span is not there. They're going to fall asleep on you. So we should do our lectures in the afternoons.
Yeah, we've even thought about doing lectures, like having people come a day early and do our lectures and then go out to the sites.
That's great too. That's great too.
Again,
on the boat, we used to do it in the morning before we even went out to the site.
Yeah, the boats aren't as equipped as well anymore to do the lectures. The hotels seem to be better, but yeah.
We don't want
we
to
still do them on the boats.
Right. We don't want to do cruises anymore anyway. That's why we're not doing it next year.
Well, it's unfortunate that some of the things that surround these cruises, when you have tons and tons of boats and you have all that exhaust, and there's just so many things with the boats that it's more difficult now that, well, tourism's down again actually right now, but it will explode as soon as
once the gem opens. I mean, I've seen groups that they're gonna offer a special package. You fly to Cairo, you stay in a hotel in Cairo.
Yep.
You do things there. You take the train because now there's a station stopped right by the gem. You take the train, you go there, you go in the museum, do the museum. Maybe the next day you go around the plateau. You don't go in the pyramids. You just go around the plateau. You go back and you fly home for a couple $1,000s a person.
Yep.
That's
well,
what
they're coming up with all these new programs and new hotels being built in the plateau area. And they're literally going to flatten the village, build more hotels.
I know that's coming. I know.
Food gardens and everything's going to change. So it is really, I think, I've been so blessed to have been here these last 16 years and have the experiences that I had.
Yes.
Because things are changing on the ground here. And I do encourage people to get to Egypt in any way that they can.
And I keep telling people it's not going to get cheaper. It's always going to get more expensive each year. People would say to me over the years, I want to come with you, but I can't afford it now. And I say, okay, but the longer you wait, the more expensive it's going to get.
Every year, and it's worse now than it was even like 8 years ago. Every year in the last 8 years, they've raised all the prices,
and they're going to raise them again next year when the gem is open.
And the venues they're way out of line even, but they suffered during the pandemic. And
Yep.
It's the same all over the world, but Egypt also suffers with the value of the dollar shifting to such an extent that the Egyptian pound is devalued.
Very soon it's going to be 50 pounds to the dollar. Very soon.
It's been really difficult for the Egyptian people to survive through all.
That's
but they're the most resilient people I think I've seen in any part of the world.
Yep.
They know how to roll with the punches, and they have amazing survival skills.
After the revolution in 1952, they actually had a depression where the money was valued and food wasn't available. That's why they would always tell me that Najiba was expert at cooking vegetarian meals because meat and chicken were hard to get in those days, and she did things with beans and with mashi and koshery, which is my favorite, which is a perfect.
The falafel with beans is healthy. It's protein.
That's right. So it's koshery is the perfect vegan meal. It's carbohydrates and protein.
So no, and we're going through that now, and it's a similar thing, and it's just, if you need to come to Egypt, find a way to do it.
And I was ready to go to Egypt in the 70s, like the picture you showed with me and Board. In the 70s, I was ready to come to Egypt. Certainly in the 80s, but I didn't have the money. Just a poor hippie who was struggling to survive and sponsoring my own research. But in 1992, miracle. But I told Jocelyn, The Rosicrucians teach there's no such thing, what we call an accident or a miracle, is only the operation of a law that we don't understand. There really are no miracles. Everything happens in its own time when it's supposed to happen. So in 1992, the money appeared and I could go to Egypt. And I tell everybody, if you do it hard enough, you manifest, you meditate on it, and you put it out there to your guides, to whatever deity you think you worship, the money will appear.
It's true, Stephen. The same thing happened to me. I knew I was coming to Egypt from the time I was a young child.
Right.
But when I was finally told it's time to go, I didn't have the money. Who has that kind of money,
Right.
just lying around?
Right.
But I went ahead and registered for the tour, and I paid my deposit. I even went out and it was my first trip outside of the States. I got my passport, and the money appeared. And then in 2007, it wasn't that much, it wasn't that much longer after.
2 years, just 2 years, right? 2 years.
Yeah. Right. And I said, I have to be there. I mean, if Hakim's going to be on that tour. And the money came. And I learned a lot about manifesting in those days.
That's what we try to tell everybody.
It's so much easier than you think.
Some people are worried about the price. And the fact is, we're charging probably half as much as some groups are charging who are doing less than we do and don't have the awareness that we do. So one lady
about manifesting, just be careful what you're wishing for because you'll get it.
No, that's true. That's true too. That is true too. Right. But you made it, Alan. You came.
Alan came. Yep, that was a really good tour. 2016.
Good. This is what we should wrap up with.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is the tour that Stephen's been talking about. It's going to be next October, the last 2 weeks of October, a couple of days into November, and with Jocelyn Starfeather, which our audience, Alan's and mine, you all know Jocelyn, and Jocelyn and I have led several tours together. We've known each other since the pandemic. She's a wonderful, beautiful young woman, and y'all know Stephen. And I will definitely make a presence, and I think it's going to be an exceptional experience. We're moving into an age where everyone is beginning to wake up. That's one of the beauties of the tours that we have now, that people are more aware. They're not coming in with not knowing anything. These people today, at least the ones attracted to these experiences, come in with all these different levels of expertise.
Yes.
And it's amazing sometimes what they bring to me. They don't have enough time to get out everything they want to explain to me from what whether it's a doctor, whether it's an engineer, whether it's a physicist,
right.
They see what we're talking about in all these many different levels. And I think that's why we created the Kemet School and why I created Horus Rising, is to make this happen, to bring all of these different people together and grow the knowledge. And everyone who participates is a part of that.
Right, exactly. The last thing I want to share with Hakim and is he would say to me, Stephen, what we are presenting is not theory. It's not theory. It is the ancient wisdom. If people want to learn, they want to come more, it's come in, sit down, have some chai, smoke some shisha. We'll go deeper. If people want to argue and debate, he would say, have a nice day. There's no debate. People want to argue with me all the time. And people get really pissed off at me.
Subject and ask them what they wanted to drink.
And his house was the only house in Egypt where women could smoke shisha. But that's another thing. But it is what it is. And that's what I tell people. You want to argue, debate. So many people over the years have wanted me to back their little pet theory. This thing, the pyramid was this. It was a water pump. It was built by extraterrestrials. Blah 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 blah. I said, well, we don't go there. That's all. And when people would bug Hakim and want to put the little pet theory to him, he would just change the subject. Sometimes even look at somebody else and start to talk to them. And the same thing happened with, people would come to him and say, oh, I think I was an incarnation of Nefertiti. Oh, I was Ramses II. And Hakim would laugh and say, well, that's nice, but it's who you are now that is most important, what you're doing now. And I put in the land and from light into darkness. People used to do the same to the Dalai Lama. People would come to the Dalai Lama and say, do you remember all the 13 reincarnations of the past Dalai Lamas? He'd say, oh, yes, of course. And they'd want to know, what about this one? And what about that one? And he would change the subject. Again, it's who you are now. It doesn't make a difference if you were Moses, if you were Alexander the Great. It's who you are now that is important. So Hakim would never dwell on the subject of reincarnation because he didn't believe in it. And so he would say, it's great if that's who you think you were, but who you are now, and come and learn, and we'll show you the wisdom, and we'll teach you the wisdom. And that's what we're going to do on tour. We're going to share wisdom and teachings that you've gathered tremendously over the last 15, 16 years. And just to say that when we do this next year, it will be almost exactly to the date, a 20-year reunion when Patricia first came to Egypt with me in 2005.
Almost exactly to the date.
Almost exactly. It was October. I go back, I have journals. And I remember, I look at my journals and I go back to 2005, and I'm saying in my journals, on this tour, the people that really getting it are Patricia and Linda and the other, Cynthia, whoever you came with at that time. Judy. I said, these three are getting it the most of all. And sure enough, the last day after we had our final dinner, I went to bed early, and I come and see that there's little notes have been passed under my door from Patricia, from Linda.
Well, you didn't come back from Hakim's. We waited.
I know. We stayed up probably till 2 a.m. We used to.
I'm sure you did.
We used to talk and talk and talk. When he came here in 2006 and spent 3 weeks with me, we would start as soon as he woke up till finally when he had tired at night, talk. But he stopped the third book. He said, no, Stephen, we're just doing what the Greeks did. The netters will label themselves.
Beautiful.
And so I'm pretty much done for today. Alan, you've been quiet. Is there anything else you wanted to ask or talk about?
No, I'm just happy to take it all in. It's great to hear you guys talking about Hakim and your roots and your thoughts on everything and where all this is going. And
great.
I think we're all on the right track.
Yes, you are. You guys are doing great work. I tell everybody to listen to your guys' podcast. It's so rich, so full of tremendous information. And, as you can see, Patricia and I could talk to each other for hours.
Oh, yeah, and have.
Well, I hope we'll have you back pretty soon.
Thank you. Whatever. Have a good trip.
I've already invited him, so definitely we'll do that.
Great. And whatever subject you want to talk about.
And thank you, Patricia. And we will have information on your tour up on our new website, horusrising.com, very soon.
Yes.
So check that.
It's up to Jocelyn. Jocelyn's the one. She's struggling now to come out with a title. And she's putting these long. I said, no. Make it simple. Just a simple phrase like the return of ancient wisdom or something like that. She wants, the untold Egypt that you've never heard, the indigenous wisdom teacher. I said, people don't want any long titles. Make it nice and short and sweet. She'll post it soon, and we'll be ready to go. I've got people waiting to sign up right now, and they're anxious to go and want to know.
I've had a few write to me, Stephen, about coming on. So, yeah.
Great. Love you both. Love you both.
You too, Stephen.
Masalam, Habibis.
Masalam.